Last week, KZN's police boss, Lieutenant General Konasi, made some explosive allegations. He claimed that the South African justice system is on the brink of collapse. He suggested that a criminal cartel with deep state links is active in our country. And he also hinted that deep state capture is far from over. Now, today we had in the hot seat of the Madlanga Commission, we had National Police Commissioner Fani Masimola, and he is a career police officer with over 38 years of experience. Masimola went through basically his experience with his CV, much how like we did with Lieutenant General Konasi. And then we went on to the Constitution. Now, this was not just a history lesson or a law lesson, because this is pretty important. I explained it a little bit in one of my videos last week about how the Constitution sets up the roles of the police, the commissioner, and then the Minister of Police. So the lawmakers who made our Constitution, I believe that we have one of the best constitutions in the world, if not the best. And what they did is that they did not want political interference from the Minister of Police. So what they did is that they set the Minister of Police to have policy powers. Those are, for example, to set up a broad goal, like let's take guns off the street or something like that. And the power to make task force, to direct investigations, to stop investigations, that relies on the police commissioner, Fani Masimola's office. That has nothing to do with the police minister. And this is important because it just shows us how much Sensor Mkhunu allegedly overstepped in his role. So we went over again the political killings task force. I've spoken a lot about this unit, and basically he just reiterated what General Konasi said about its success, how it is one of the most successful units in the country because it works with prosecutors and it's prosecutor driven, unlike the other cases in the country, because normally you open a case, police investigate, they compile a case, and then they submit it to the MPA, and then the MPA decides whether they will prosecute or not. In this case, the prosecutors were working with the police, so they could say, for example, in order to get a successful conviction, I need this and this and this for evidence. So they would drive the investigations, which is why they were so successful. And we know that it was formed in 2018 by its operational coordinator, Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo, who is in trouble at the moment. He is currently being prosecuted by IDAC, that's the South African anti-corruption body, for the alleged appointment of a 29-year-old BMW employee in a high crime intelligence position. He is currently being investigated for that and prosecuted for that. But like I said, he's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And these are all just allegations against him. We went over about how hitmen target people and how they how the political killings task force basically investigates these killings based on hitmen's modus operandi. We always know that there is a target, so someone who wants someone unalive for a specific reason. Motive is very important here, even though it doesn't have to be proven as part of the law. And then they assign a spotter to study their routine. This is why I always tell everyone, vary your routines, and procure a firearm is the next one, and then procure the hitman to do the job. And one of the reasons why this is important is because the Political Killings Task Force, they employ police from multiple provinces, and they are brought in to ensure that investigations weren't blocked. If you have people coming from out of town, for example, it's much harder for corruption to occur. And this way of doing things was very successful. For the next bit we're going to go over about the conflict that Masimola laid bare between him and previous disgraced police minister Sensor Mkhunu. And what basically occurred here is that this task force was disbanded on the 31st of December. We know that General Konasi mentioned that it was weird because it's, political killings happen a lot during the festive season. And we know that Masimola only heard about it on the 2nd of January when someone sent him a WhatsApp with the letter. He wasn't even consulted, he wasn't informed. And then he was concerned about this. So according to his own testimony, he spoke to Cyril on the 1st of February because Sensor Mkhunu was not replying to his phone calls. New number, who's this, right? Sensor Mkhunu was ghosting him. And Ramaphosa allegedly told him that he would speak to Sensor Mkhunu, but he never heard back. And we know that on the 15th of January, Masimola says that Shadrick Sabir, that is the deputy commissioner, came with a a letter to disband the task team, and he wanted Masemola to sign it. But Masemola refused to put his name to it, and he says that Shadrack Sabir, who has also been suspended now, allegedly did it with using his own name. From the testimony, it was clear that the disbandment was illegal, and Masemola agreed that it was illegal, and at times he was talking about perhaps not disbanding it immediately because the budget had been approved until March 2025, but instead to wind it down. And then Judge Madlanga posed a quick question here. If the minister's instruction was unlawful, why not refuse outright? Masemola explained that while he initially resisted, he eventually had no choice but to consider winding the task team down due to all this pressure that was being placed on him. And this moment exposes a culture of fear and procedural caution, even within the police. Even a national commissioner feels constrained when faced with conflicting directives from political leaders. Now into Vusi the cat. We know that he has been charged for the attempted murder of his girlfriend, but we also know now that he was questioned in 2024 by the unit with regards to the kidnapping of his friend Jerry Bashoga. And we know that Deputy Commissioner Shadrack Sabir, now suspended, was allegedly very close to Matala, that they were buddies. These are allegations. And also enter Katie, because we know Katie faces charges, Katie Malefe faces charges linked to several murders, including that of DJ Somebody in Johannesburg. And we know that 10 members of the PKA were sent to investigate these cases. They were taken from KZN and put in Gauteng. And this is where things get interesting, because when they were investigating the unaliving of Armand Swartz, he was that employee, that engineer. They were selling springs to Transnet. The springs were made for R2.30 and they were being sold for R152, so someone was pocketing the difference. Now, someone blew the whistle on that, and that person happened to resemble Armand Swartz, who was just minding his own business, and not that whistleblowers should be unalived, but I think Armand Swartz is just a tragedy of someone who didn't even have anything to do with this. He just resembled someone, and because of that, in the case of mistaken identity, he was unalived in his car on his way to work. And we know that when they were investigating the case, that one of the members of the police was allegedly threatened, and they managed to secure security for themselves because of the threats that they received. And another 2 officers were allegedly told by a senior police officer that there are 3 envelopes. One for them, 3 envelopes which we are going to assume have things in it, such as money, but this is an assumption. So there were 3 envelopes, one for them, one for the prosecutor, and one for the magistrate. Now this just shows you the level of corruption that is occurring around these political killings cases. The TLDR of today's testimony is that Masemola's testimony paints a highly effective task team, the political killings task team, that was abruptly targeted for disbandment despite their success rate, despite a previous police minister praising them, a police minister allegedly overstepping his constitutional authority and getting involved in the disbandment, as well as a national commissioner, Masemola himself, navigating operational responsibility, political interference, and a culture of fear. And as the Madlanga Commission continues, the focus remains on whether political interference in the political killings task force was a once-off misjudgment or part of a wider attempt to derail investigations. We heard at the end of the day about the Big Five. These are allegedly the names of people who run 5 cartels in South Africa. And according to people in the commission, these names are going to be dropped sooner rather than later. So hang around for that, because, things are starting to get very interesting. Now, if you like what I do, consider giving me a like and a follow. And also I have a YouTube page under Carri-Ann Bloom. Consider subscribing to me on there. Welcome back to my coverage of the Madlanga Commission. Today I am recapping day 5 of the inquiry. And yesterday, Fani Masemola, the Police High Commissioner, shook the room with his account of how Police Minister Senzo Mkhunu disbanded the KZN political killings team, the PKTT, on New Year's Eve while he was on leave. Remember, he only found out about that allegedly through a WhatsApp that someone else sent him with the letter. Now, today, Masemola continued with his evidence, which only deepened the controversy. So, Masemola opened up by addressing complaints against the PKTT. He said that AfriForum, for instance, had written to the police about the case of a murdered DA councillor, Mr. Ndlovu. They wanted regular updates, but police couldn't provide feedback. When AfriForum complained, arrests were eventually made. Then Masemola highlighted a 2017 assassination case. ANC councillor Sindisu Magaqwa. He stressed that the public only knew the details of this case because the PKTT investigated. Within months of their formation, the team had already arrested the hitmen and brought them to justice. And this is along the trend of Masemola's testimony from yesterday, proving the success rate and the task team's effectiveness and why South Africa needs such a team. And this essentially makes criticism of them unfounded. He argued that political killings are far more complex than normal unalivings. For example, it's not just a killer and a victim. There's a lot of middlemen involved. We went over it a little bit yesterday, but you need a planner, you need a spotter to look at the routine, you need a middleman for handing over money and finding a weapon, you need someone to sell you the weapon. And this is a very complex sort of web of people. And this is why you need a dedicated team to track cell phones, to see who is interacting with who. And this is why this unit is important. And we had another name drop of Jerry. We know that Jerry Bashoga is that kidnapped businessman. He is a tender entrepreneur. He was kidnapped. He was meeting someone for a business meeting and he was kidnapped at the KFC. And then remember, if you go to my original TikTok I made on it, Jerry was kidnapped by professionals. These people took him out of a KFC and we didn't even get a hit on facial hits. They knew how to avoid all the cameras. And this has long been my suspicion that in these syndicates, there are highly trained individuals, working members, perhaps members of the South African Defence Force, ex-members of that, people who have high military training. And we also touched briefly on the murder of 2021 whistleblower Babita Decaron, which I will also be doing a TikTok on probably later next week. But Justice Madlanga questioned whether Masemola needed to go into so much detail. I think Masemola, now that he's more comfortable, he was a little bit nervous yesterday. He has this tendency to wander off track, but still there is a clear link in his mind. These cases showed a wider climate of organized crime and corruption, and this is what the PKTT was dedicated and created to fight. Now, the real drama started coming in on the 6th of March 2025, according to Masemola, when he had a meeting in Cape Town with Senzo Mkhunu. He said that Senzo Mkhunu and other colleagues wanted immediate disbandment of the PKTT. When Masemola asked why, Mkhunu allegedly replied, political killings took place before 1994, not after. Now, we know this is not an accurate statement. It is a jaw-dropping claim. Between 1994 and 2013 alone, there were an estimated 450 political killings just in KZN. So the idea that they simply stopped is staggering and simply misleading. Masemola also testified that he wanted the team phased out gradually. Remember his words of wind out, if all, but he felt as though he had no choice to comply. Now, I'm just going to make a comment here. Just insert yourself in his situation. Fani Masemola is sitting there. He doesn't want this team gone. He's getting pressure from the Minister of Police, which is essentially his boss, although the Minister of Police is not allowed to make policy, is only allowed to direct policy changes, not allowed to interfere, but he is. And then he's also getting pressure from underneath him, from his Deputy High Commissioner, Shadrick Sabir. So put yourself in his shoes, right? And with this, we're getting this clear fractions that are forming within the SAPS, the leadership, the high echelons of the leadership. Now, Masemola then went on to describe another meeting on the 27th of March 2025 when Mkhunu became visibly angry when he discovered that the PKTT was still taking new cases, including the assassination of an ANC councillor in February 2025. So imagine that, a police minister getting furious because a political killings task team is investigating a political killing. This is strange indeed. But even more explosive, Masemola says Mkhunu claimed President Cyril Ramaphosa supported the disbandment. Masemola found this odd because Ramaphosa himself had earlier suggested deploying the PKTT to Fort Hare. Remember, Masemola also said that he went to go speak to Cyril about what Senzo was wanting the unit disbanded, and Cyril said he'll go talk to Senzo Mkhunu, but he never heard back. So we want to hear from Cyril. Comment below if you want to hear what Cyril has to say, because Ramaphosa's spokesperson later refused to comment directly, saying they would only respond once all evidence is in. Now, after tea, we went on to those 121 dockets. Remember, they were taken from KZN and moved to Pretoria, but before they were moved, they were copied, they were photographed or documented in some way. And I think the reason that this was done was to ensure that when they got them back, that there was no interference. There was no these have been the insinuations that there was no missing pages or alterations that were made. And Masemola dropped another bombshell. Phone records from an attempted murder accused enter Vusi the cat. Vusi the cat has entered the WhatsApp group, allegedly implicated Shadrack Sabir in pushing for Censor Mkunu's directive to disband the PKTT. He suggested that the timing was tied to protecting cartel members from investigation. Now, this is what General Okanasi has been hinting at, what we've all kind of been going at, is that according to Masemola, the disbandment of the task team's real reason was to protect alleged cartel figures like Vusi the cat. But here's the contradiction. We know that it was Mkunu himself who flagged that dodgy 360 million rand contract that was linked to the cat, that police contract that was given to him for the health, leading to its cancellation. So was Mkunu shielding Mklala or exposing him? Even Masemola admitted that this part didn't add up. This is curious and curiouser, right? Now, I have a timeline on this, and if I go through my timeline in my head, I must go and find it. It's somewhere in my notes. I remember Vusi the cat was allegedly talking to the police minister through his alleged middleman, Brian Magotsi, and we know that there was some time when the police minister allegedly started ghosting Vusi the cat. Now, we don't know why that happened. Maybe something happened and he decided that he was going to allegedly turn on the cat. I'm not too sure, but maybe we will get answers in this inquiry. I can only hope so, because this is just me speculating. The commission also heard about KZN violence monitor Mary de Haas, who accused the PKTT of wasteful spending and torture. Masemola dismissed her as a serial complainer, but de Haas has decades of credibility warning about police abuses, so she's pretty well known in this field. Meanwhile, Masemola claims that she's basically a Karen, but the commission suggested that her complaint should not be brushed aside. And meanwhile, Masemola painted Mkunu as a minister obsessed with small issues like the Central Firearms Registry, while avoiding big issues like political killings. Now that wraps up for day 5. In 2 days of testimony, Commissioner Masemola has accused both his deputy, Shadrack Sabir, and his political boss, Censor Mkunu, of siding with criminals, protecting cartels, and sabotaging the PKTT. But contradictions remain, especially around Mkunu's actions with the cat. Did he protect him or expose him? Or was there some, as Taylor Swift would say, some bad blood that happened? But for now, PKTT is still operating. No signed disbandment letter exists. But political fallout continues, and this commission is just beginning. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below.